This platform is all about uncomfortable truths that aren't necessarily politically correct and expressing, in fact, people expressing what they really think. I spoke to Yamuna, who also goes by the nickname Shorty. She is the director of a company called The Why Practice, and here's what she had to say.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, we're going to start by talking about your upbringing. Tell us a little bit about where you were born, where you grew up.
Okay, so I was born in London and I moved to Germany when I was 5. I lived in Hamburg and went to an international school for 13 years, which is why I have this crazy accent that most people think is American, but I'm not American. I went to the international school 13 years. I moved back to London when I was 18 and I've been here ever since. And a few weeks ago, I turned 40.
You're 40?
Yes. Thank you.
Happy birthday for a few weeks ago.
Thank you.
How does living in Germany bring up an American accent, though?
Well, I get this question a lot.
Because you do sound American.
Well, that's the thing. Americans think I sound British, and it really just depends on who I'm talking to. My accent seems to fluctuate. I think it's a form of endearment, actually. Most of the children going to an international school will come speaking English as a second language, and it is just easier to learn English in an American accent, I think, than it is a British accent. And all the kids are encouraged to watch movies, which are mainly Hollywood movies, and I think we pick it up from there. But I didn't go to school with particularly many Americans, and I didn't have many American teachers. I had mainly Scottish teachers, actually. But yeah, so it just sort of rubs up on all of us, and I think nowadays you meet more and more people who are international and have an accent, but there's still a stigma around it, and I often get told that, I'm not a proper Londoner, but I've lived here for the vast majority of my life, so if I'm not from London, then I wouldn't know where I'm from.
How did you end up in Germany? Like, even though you were born here, like, do you know why you went to that school, or were you too young to remember?
No, I know. So my mother is German, and she had lived in Hamburg previously. She was an actress she is an actress. Sorry, she always says it's forever. It's not something you leave behind. My mother had lived in Germany and been in film, TV, just the entertainment industry. So she wanted me to have more of an international upbringing. My father was Indian, but he passed away when I was 3, and she just wanted me to have an education that was, I guess, more international than just being in the UK.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember what memories do you have of your dad?
I actually have quite a few memories, considering that I was 3. The main thing is driving in his car and him feeding me rice cakes and me always being here. And that's one thing that many people have said to me over the years as well. I was always here with him, and I was a daddy's girl. So yeah, I do have memories of him. Yeah.
Do you have any siblings?
I have siblings from my father's side and from my mother's side, but not from both parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So growing up with just your mum, were there any siblings around?
There were not, and my mother was an actress, director, producer who traveled quite a lot. So I was left in kind of not a foster situation, but I had another lady raise me, and she had a daughter who was 4 years older than me. So while I was in Germany, it was kind of like I had a sibling, but we're not so close anymore.
Okay.
It's just me.
And obviously today you have your own family. You've got two boys.
I do. I have Milo, who is 8, and Arlo, who is 5.
Beautiful boys.
Thank you. And I home educate them, which is part of, I suppose, my identity now. A home educator.
Yeah. How come you've decided to do that? Or has that always been the case?
It's always been the case, yeah.
Okay.
I know a lot of people decided to start home educating sort of when the pandemic happened, and
Yeah.
there were some people who realized that it completely wasn't for them, and other people who thought, oh, well, you know what, I can do this, and this is a different way of educating my children, but it's still a good one. We decided to, my ex-partner and I, we decided to home educate because the school we wanted to send our son to, their Ofsted report fell in the two areas where we felt quite passionate about. My ex-husband is former Marine, and he's done a lot of close protection security as well. They fell in their security area,
Right.
and then they also were failing the children coming to the school speaking a second language. So for me, coming from an international school, I just thought, no, I didn't want that. We couldn't afford private school, and I discovered Ken Robinson, who I watched his TED talk on education, and it just blew my mind. I realized that I could offer my children a much better education. I'm not bashing school by any means. I think school is a wonderful area for a lot of children, for the majority of children to learn, but it wasn't the lifestyle that we wanted. We wanted to travel more, we wanted to implement more mindfulness, more fitness, language, arts. I mean, I think art has actually been taken out of the curriculum in this country now. So if school, don't quote me on it, I'm not 100% sure because I'm not in the school system, but I do know that it's not big in schools at the moment. And for some schools, yes, they do have art and they facilitate, art for the children, but it's not really a big subject. It's not pushed a lot. And coming from a mother who was an actress, and many generations of my family are artists, we just thought we'd like to push that more. And so we decided to do it on our own. And it's been 4 years now, and they're both thriving.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So you have two boys, mixed heritage. Where's their dad from? Remind me.
Their dad is French. He's mixed black and white.
Okay. How do you think racism affects your children?
Luckily, I think so far it's not affected them in a negative way. A few years ago, I did get a lot of stick from some people when my husband and I decided to take the boys to the Black Lives Matter protest around the George Floyd incident. People thought I was an irresponsible parent for taking my children to something that was dangerous and within a pandemic, but actually, it was a really, really good day. We made signs with the boys, and we told them as much as was appropriate, considering one was 6 and one was 3. The 3-year-old didn't really get it; he was just coloring and happy to be there. But my 6-year-old is he's highly emotionally intelligent, and he kind of understood what was going on, and it was important for us to involve our children in a part of history. Some of those protests were the largest of their kind ever to have taken place. I just think it's important for them to know where they're from and how things have affected their family members prior to them. They're mixed, and so I don't think they will be affected as much as my husband was, for example. But race is something uncomfortable, and it needs to be discussed, and it needs to be implemented more into the national curriculum, actually. 20, 30 years ago, I was a little bit different, but we live in a very, very multicultural city. But, moving forward, that's another reason why we decided to home educate. There shouldn't be Black History Month. Black history should just be part of the curriculum, I think, because it's important.
Do you think that have you had the talk with them, the talk that parents have with their children if their children are mixed or black? Like,
Yes, I have. I have had it, and I felt a little bit ill-equipped to talk about it. I learned so much during that George Floyd scenario. I felt very naive, and I spent about 10 days watching all of the recommendations from Netflix on, how to educate yourself. And I can safely say I went into a little bit of a depression for a few weeks because my mind was just blown. And coming from an international school it's quite interesting because we kind of all used to make fun of each other. Obviously, we didn't use derogatory racist terms, but we kind of all made fun of each other, like, oh, you're from there, and, you're from there. And it was all said very lighthearted.
Yeah.
But it was a very protected little bubble of an international school. And when I came to London, I was shocked and, sometimes a little bit scared of the racism that I saw in front of me. And I've experienced racism myself, like, because I'm German, and you can get some very naive comments like, are you a Nazi? And it's like, yes, I have brown hair and brown eyes and the Aryans love me. But no, like, it's an uncomfortable conversation even for me to have. I'm mixed, and sometimes I don't feel like I say the right things. But I think as long as people are open-minded to learning about race, and a safe space is provided where you're not judged for things that you might have been conditioned to believe, then that's okay. That opens the opportunity for people to educate themselves.
so how did you get into fitness?
Okay,
Because
so
if I look at your Instagram, there's a lot of fitness videos on there, a lot of yoga.
it's a lot of stretching, and it's sort of my own unique expression of my self-development journey. But I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not a yoga instructor. I do fitness for myself, and I encourage others to find their own unique expression through fitness, because fitness is probably one of the easiest ways that you can self-develop yourself. Your body gets stronger, your mind is clearer, and it's something that you have control over. I got into fitness. I always kind of wanted to be into fitness. So I remember when I was 14 and 15 years old doing the Cindy Crawford workout. But I never really, it never really stuck. And in 2014, just after my son was born, my husband and I had a bit of a dip in our marriage, and I thought, you know what, I might not stay in this marriage. And very superficially, I thought, you know what, if I'm gonna, move on and meet someone new, maybe I want to look really good. So I took my butt to the gym. But it was a very superficial reason for working out. It was just, I want to look good. And then after 3 or 4 months of training, I noticed that I felt calmer. My mind was a lot clearer. I could think better, longer. My focus was, my concentration was better. And I just thought, you know what, there's something here. And it's not just about strengthening your body, it's about strengthening your mind as well. And when you think about the body, mind, and soul, I thought, okay, I've started with the body. My body's getting stronger. My mind is now getting stronger. And the soul, well, that will come one day. Yeah. And it took a long time, but now I feel much more spiritually connected to myself and to the world. It's been 7 years now that I've been working out consistently. And then in 2019, I discovered NLP. I just became really I became obsessed with self-development. And when I discovered neuro-linguistic programming, that was sort of the game changer for me. It was just the wow factor. And I decided to go and get qualified. And when I went to the NLP coaching company, which is based in Hitchin, they offered a course that did NLP, clinical hypnotherapy, and life coaching. So I went for it, I got my qualification, and I decided to create my own method of training, which is active NLP. So active NLP introduces mindfulness and visualization and neuro-linguistic programming to your workout. Because I think a lot of people, they just have this concept that you need to go to the gym and punish yourself. You need to train hard, work hard, push harder to the point where you're injuring yourself, and you're not really bringing awareness to your workout. So active NLP brings awareness to your workout, and I encourage people to notice how they're talking to themselves when they're working out. And even I do it, you know, like when I'm really out of breath, I'll say, oh my God, I'm dying. But the truth is, you're actually quite the opposite of dying. Your heart is beating faster, your breath, you're out of breath, you know, your muscles are working, everything in your body is alive, but yet we still say, I'm dying. So I encourage people to become aware of what they're saying to themselves and then potentially rephrase it into something that is more useful, because self-hypnosis is so important. The way you talk to yourself has such an effect on your life. And if you are constantly, I use this as an example, especially with women, mainly because I am one and I have a lot of moms around me, but I would encourage men as well who have, you know, hang-ups about their body. If you want to be beautiful and have an amazing body, but you're only looking in the mirror and being critical of yourself, you're never going to feel beautiful. So even if you don't believe it, there is that kind of fake it till you make it mentality. Look in the mirror and just say, I'm beautiful. Say it every day and you will start believing it. And then I also encourage people who come on board to try active NLP to acknowledge the parts of their body that they don't love and send that part love. Like, all of you deserves to be loved. And again, with mothers, we have such hang-ups about, you know, how our boobs might be after we breastfeed, or how our stomach might be after it's stretched to have a child, or even further below, you know, things happen. But if you constantly have a negative vibration to these parts of your body, that's only going to bring you down. So you have to send love and light to those areas. And actually, I always had a hang up about my stomach way before I had children. And it's only this year that I've sort of forgiven myself for hating my stomach. I've hated my stomach since I was 15 years old. And that in itself is so sad. When I think about, you know, the inner child in me, the inner teenager who hated her stomach at 15 and had such a negative association with it and always hiding it and never wearing bikinis because I was ashamed. That is unfortunately the society that I grew up in, and I'd like to think that it is changing. We do live in a world where everything is filtered, but there are also so many influencers showing their stretch marks, showing their, you know, wobbly belly. And it's not up to anyone to criticize, like it, hate it, or whatever. That person needs to be okay with it. So I think as soon as you start embracing, you have one body and you have to nourish it and you have to love it, that's a massive shift in your mentality that is only going to help you elevate.
I think it's great that you discovered this mindset, and obviously the NLP course that kind of that aligns with that mindset as well, and that you teach.
May I just say,
Yeah.
I'm very big on not saying I'm a teacher. I'm a facilitator of change.
Okay.
Because teaching is kind of, again, it's in school. You taught this and you should know this and da-da-da. But I don't teach people. I encourage people and I facilitate change in people. But I'm not a teacher either. I'm still learning. We all need to still be learning.
Yeah, agreed. So you got there by after you know, a breakup, without going into too much detail, or feel free to go into detail if you want. But I think it would be great for watchers, viewers, if you kind of talk a little bit about how that got you to
Where I am now.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, in 2014, when my first son was born, there was a dip in my marriage, but it wasn't over. And we went on to have another child, and we did have good times. But unfortunately, I think we were just going in different directions. And the more I understood about self-development and the more I learned in my own therapy, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy, and it got to the point where it wasn't just about me being happy, it was about him being happy. And he wasn't happy either. And I didn't want my children growing up in a home where they would witness things that I didn't want them to witness.
Where do you think that, because it's common, it is common, where do you think that the unhappiness comes from? Like, was there something that he began to do wrong? Was there something that you think you are taking accountability for? Like, where did that same thing happen with my mum and dad? But and like I said, it's common, but where did that come in for you? Where did the unhappiness come in?
I think all unhappiness stems from childhood. Conscious parenting is one of the things that I help my clients with, and you don't need to be a parent to benefit from a conscious parenting approach. So very often people will say to me, oh, well, I'm dating this guy or I'm dating this girl, and how do I know if it's going to work, and how do I know that that's the one for me? And I always say to them, okay, look at the relationship that person has with their mother, look at the relationship that person has with their father, and then look at the relationship between that mother and father. Somewhere within those dynamics, you will find that person's love language, their trauma, or anything. So I think my husband and I got married very young. He was 25, I was 26. It was a shotgun wedding, but we were in love, and I don't know, like, it's very easy to point a finger at the other person and say that person did wrong. But the truth is, and I read something very interesting on Instagram the other day, and it was talking about healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships. And it was saying one person might be manipulative or abusive, but the other person also has to take accountability because they haven't set clear boundaries and standards, and they're not saying, I'm not standing for this anymore, right? So there's a right and wrong sometimes. There isn't always a right or wrong, and sometimes that's even more difficult to get over. So I just think my husband and I came from very, very different backgrounds, and in the longevity of it, there was a lack of communication and understanding, and it was better to go our separate ways.
Can I ask you a question about your what you said about boundaries? If I don't know, if someone drops a tenner on the floor as they're walking along and I see it, I could pick it up and go about my business, pocket it, and I can say, it's that person's fault for dropping the tenner, or I could stop that person and show them what they've dropped so that they can pick it up and they'll say thank you and move on. Mm-hmm. I kind of, obviously it's an analogy, but that kind of reminds me of when people talk about setting boundaries, and another kind of example might be a woman or man who's suffering from domestic abuse, and the person on the other end of the abuse is receiving the blame because they didn't set boundaries. The
thing is, like,
you can choose to not be abusive to that person.
I don't think being abusive is a choice. I think that something would have happened to you in your childhood to unfortunately imprint on you. You can go either way. So for example, my mother was beaten really badly by her mother when she was growing up. She never laid a hand on me. She went the total opposite way. But I also know people who were slapped around and beaten with belts, and they now are in abusive relationships.
Hurt people.
Exactly, it's true. And self-development is all about healing. And I would love if people understood that more. And I would also love that if people could understand that self-development therapy, getting a coach doesn't make you any less than. If anything, it makes you stronger because you're going to confront those things that are quite painful. And yes, some of the things might be difficult and very uncomfortable to experience, to relive. However, it's not as bad as you think because the breakthroughs make it worth it, you know?
Last one on your marriage, then we'll move on from that topic, I promise. For people to learn, for others to learn, you know, because marriage is somewhat of an achievement, you know. It's a no.
No, I don't believe that. I believe that we're conditioned to think that, especially from certain backgrounds, certain cultures, certain religions, you know, we are conditioned to think that you should get married, you need to get married, you're decent if you get married. If you don't get married by a certain age, you are a spinster if you're a woman, but you're, what's the word for
Bachelor.
men? Bachelor for men. It's awful conditioning. It's outdated. And I feel that we need to move on from that as a society in general.
What's one word of a word of advice, not one word, but what advice would you give to the world, men and women, or just women if you feel more comfortable, about marriage? You just gave one, which is that, you know, the kind of programming to make sure you do that in your life is not necessarily something you agree with. But from someone who has been married, from your actual marriage and your time being married, you know, what's one word of advice that you can give different to what you just...
It's definitely not one word, and it's so complex. But I think what I would love to see people do is, if you are going to get married, don't live by anybody else's rules. You know, marriage should be something wonderful, and you need to have a marriage that works for you. So, for example, I know some marriages. The marriages that I know that are successful, they're not exclusive marriages. They are not monogamous.
Okay.
And maybe that's just the circles that I now run in. But I know a lot of married people, and I'm friends with a lot of men who are married, and it's shocking how many cheat on their wives. And it's also shocking how many married men are in my DMs. So what I would say is, if you are going to get married, honesty is really, that's the word I would say. Be honest, you know, because exclusivity works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone. And also, if you're married for 10, 15, 20 years, you might have started off exclusive, but maybe more couples need to have a conversation around being non-exclusive. And a term that I'm learning about now is ethical non-monogamy, where, you know, you discuss your rules, you discuss what you would like and what you're comfortable with, and then maybe you can invite other people into your sexual space.
Are you dating at the moment?
I am not. No.
Why not?
I only left my husband in October. I've been on one date since then, and it was lovely. But I just don't think I am in a headspace where I can offer someone my best. And my priority is not finding a man. My priority at the moment is my business and my children, and I'm quite happy with that.
How long were you married?
13 years. Yes. And I'm proud of it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a long time.
We did build a life together, and we have 2 very, very beautiful children. And I'm still grieving my marriage. So I think until I'm over the grief, although I don't think grief ever really leaves you, because on some days I'm like, I'm so over it. And on other days I feel like I'm right back to square one. But I just, you know, I'm still in a process where I'm very much grieving my marriage. Not just my marriage, I'm grieving the whole family dynamic that we had built together. So until I'm more healed from that, I will not be moving on with anyone.
Seeing as you are not in the game of dating, but from the sidelines looking in, whilst you live your best life and work in your business and raise those beautiful boys, what do you see? What do you have to say about today's dating market? You know, what's going on out there?
Well, I really wouldn't know. But
you got friends who are dating, who come to you.
yes, I do, and I see how terrible it is. I really do. I see my girlfriends get heartbroken. I see men who are misogynistic. I don't meet. Maybe I'm running in the wrong circles. My best friend is a guy, and he constantly says to, when I say, oh, my DMs are dry, he says, well, you're not going to meet the man that you want on Instagram. And he's true. It's true. I don't go out to meet any nice men in nice places.
Wait, you say your DMs are dry, or he says?
They are dry. Mine are dry.
As in, you don't get DMs?
I get DMs, but they're terrible. Yeah. It's terrible. And men really should understand that unless you request a dick pic, trust me, we don't want them.
Isn't that illegal now?
It is illegal, and I tell them that. I say, by the way, it's illegal. But, it just, I also think that pornography has changed society in a very horrible way. I grew up in a time where you were lucky if you got a VHS of, Jenna Jameson passed around, or you got, a Hustler magazine that had some boobs, right? But now porn is so regularly available, and it has set some awful standards, and I think it's ruined men and women. I'm sorry, I take that back. I think it's really changed the way people look at sex, the way people have sex, and also just the internet. Everybody is so easily available, and if that person, it annoys you or something, you can just block them and then move on to the next. And there's also not really an opportunity or a space where people are really communicating about what went wrong. So there was someone that I was a little bit interested in, but I was left very, very confused, and I just thought, well, that's not worth it. No, I don't want to be in a space where I'm left feeling confused. I think people say it all the time, if you're feeling confused, you should probably walk away, because the right person won't make you feel confused. In
society over here in the West, or we can just talk about London, men and women, boys and girls out there dating. What should we be aiming for? Of course, it used to be, as you said, the programming of meet, get married, have kids, live happily ever after. Aim for that. But you've said the marriages that that are successful are non-monogamous, right? So what is the best thing that society, single people in society should be doing? How should people be dating? What should the goals be?
I just feel like I'm the wrong person to ask that, because I'm in the middle of a messy divorce and I'm not dating. But
in your opinion, what
I would like to see is people being more honest with each other, especially when they're triggered. Like you said, hurt people. So, for example, if there was a couple and someone cheated, let's explore why they cheated, and let's explore how the other person feels being cheated, and let's work through it together. I think there's so many marriages and couples, you slowly stop talking, and you just kind of, you talk to your friends and you talk to your friends, or maybe you don't talk to anybody, and that's not how a relationship is going to last the test of time, and definitely not a healthy relationship. I would say, again, it's about honesty. It's about, and it's about really knowing what you want. And that might not be the same 5 years down the line, but as long as there's an open line of communication and no judgment, then I think the internet is a great thing. We are so readily available to meet people. But being honest and non-judgmental and being open. to having uncomfortable conversations. That's the thing, you know, because uncomfortable conversations aren't great, obviously, but they'll get you through the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, that's it. That's what everything should be led by, I think. That's why this channel exists. Do you think that dating apps are a good thing?
Well, I was on Tinder for like 2 minutes and nobody swiped for me. I don't really get it. As in, not that I don't get why they didn't swipe for me. I don't get the app. I'm not on apps. I guess, like I said, I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be dating.
Yeah. No, but in general though, going back to the VHS tapes days, obviously, you know, someone would approach a person and chat them up, you know, and that's how you meet in person, right? Today, if you speak to someone in person, a lot of the times it's like, huh? Are they a weirdo or something? Why are you speaking to me?
I mean, I don't get that. I love people, right? So I talk to guys quite a lot. Like if I see someone who I think is doing something cool or wearing something cool or just looks interesting, I will probably talk to them, whether they're male or female. But it's sad that we live in a society where people are probably more comfortable to text someone than they are to pick up the phone. I'm from a different generation. So for example, a few months ago, I did give my phone number to someone who had kind of been pestering me for a little while to, you know, give me give him my number. And I gave him my number. And he still hasn't called. And when he calls, I will tell him, no, because I gave you my number for you to call me, not to keep it in your phone. And I never give my number to anyone. So that's my boundary and my standard. But I understand maybe it's a bit outdated, but I'm not lowering my standards for anyone. And I'm not going to ignore the boundaries, the healthy boundaries that I have set for anyone either.
In general, with just dating in general, are apps a good thing? Like what do you think for people out there?
I really wouldn't know. However, I'm going to lean towards yes. I have a friend who is single and she regularly uses dating apps and she tells me the ones that she thinks are good. And I have friends who have met their husbands and wives on apps. So that's great, I think. But people need to know it's just a business. An app is a business. It's someone's business and someone is profiting from your misery or your happiness. It's just a business. And if you are comfortable meeting people through dating apps, then you should do that. And if you've never done it before, I encourage you to do it. I did it for a minute. Like I said, I realized very quickly that I'm not ready to date, so I won't be doing it. But when I am ready, then yes, I will probably use some dating apps.
I saw a study the other day. It just popped up on my phone. I read the article. I completely forget now who wrote it, but it popped up on Google. I clicked on it, read a piece of the article, and it was about loneliness for men being at an all-time high. Loneliness for single men. You mentioned misogyny before. Is there correlation between the two, do you think?
No, I don't think there is a correlation. Misogyny, I think, again, is something that is that comes through religion and culture and conditioning, and loneliness. Loneliness is when you are lonely. It is the same part of the brain that is active as physical harm. So being lonely is actually painful. And that is something that I learned in the pandemic as well. There were lonely people, and there were a lot of old people, I know, who died because they were lonely. You know, they had no stimulation, no nothing, no interaction, and that to me is criminal, and I do think the government should be held responsible for that, but maybe that's another talk for another day. Men's suicide, I haven't looked at the statistics recently, but if I'm not incorrect, it's more than double women's. There is so much pressure on men to provide for their family and to look a certain way, drive a certain car, have a certain body, and that's awful. Again, it's something that needs to be looked at and worked on. And one thing that I found really interesting that I discovered recently was you can emasculate a man, but you can't take, there's no equivalent for the female. You can't take the feminine out of a woman, but you can emasculate a man. And what does that say about society? We have a word that will make a man feel less than, but we don't have a word for that for women.
Well, if you call a woman a hoe, I'd say that's offensive and is like can make a woman feel less than.
It's a word. Yes, it's you can take it derogatory
I'm not a woman.
if you want.
I'm not a woman. Obviously, I don't know. This is just what I think. What do you think?
I mean, I think again, it's all about your confidence levels. If someone on the street said you're a hoe, I'd be like, okay, I know I'm not a hoe. Do you know I'm a hoe?
But in the same, okay. Well, if a woman or anyone tried to emasculate me, I don't know. You soft. I don't know. Whatever. It wouldn't do anything to me either.
So it's a confidence thing. I think mainly what I was pointing out that just because NLP is all about language, I'm very, very big on language. To me, it was quite a moment to think that there was a word that will take the manhood out of a man, but there's no equivalent word in existence to do the same. Because yeah, you can call a woman a hoe, and you can call a man a dick or whatever, but that's different. That's just, those are derogatory terms and they're insults, and that's awful. But like I said, there's no female equivalent to emasculating a man. And there, we've been conditioned in society that a man should be this way and a woman should be this way. And I just think all of that is outdated, especially when we're moving into areas where we have sort of a non-binary thing coming up.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, like, people need to bring much more awareness to how they are with themselves, how they are with other people. And again, the relationship, it's all about the relationship you have with your parents, your caregivers. And that includes people who are adopted, because there is such a thing as ancestral trauma, generational trauma, which is in your DNA. Trauma is actually passed through DNA, not just your experiences. So yes, if you experienced your abusive father beating your mother, that might have an effect on you. But even if you were adopted and you've never met your abusive father, that DNA is still within you, and you will you might have abusive tendencies because it's in your genetics.
That pressure that you spoke about, that's on men to provide and look a certain way and all of that stuff. Just holding that for a second, and then you also said, that there's men are expected to be this way, women are expected to be this way. What if someone said, if a man isn't a certain way, like how a man ought to be, according to...
Ought to be.
Yeah. Then that man may stay lonely and not attract a woman. Because aren't we different and look for opposite things in each other?
No, I don't think so. I think some people are attracted to people who have a lot in common with them, and other people are attracted to the opposite. So it's really down to each individual. What I would say is a good thing about the internet and the interwebs is that we have access to everyone now. Your people are out there. And if you're lonely, it's because you haven't found them. In my practice, the Y practice that I set up in 2020, I have 6 steps to living your best life. One of them is connect with your people. A few years ago, I mainly had my husband and 2 close friends, but I started learning that I need to find my tribe and I need to connect with like-minded people. And actually just 2 short years later, I look at my life and I have many more wonderful, inspirational people around me, especially badass feminists and other home educators, people who are like-minded like me, who are really passionate about education, passionate about giving our children the best opportunities in life, and passionate about, I think, education in general. Like, if you ever meet someone who says, I don't have anything else to learn, fire them. No, that is such a closed mindset. We should always be learning. We should always be reaching, and being able to have access to the internet and so much education literally in our hand on our phone is still a privilege. You know, there is plenty of people in the world who do not have access to an education like that, or do not have access to the internet. So practice gratitude. You know, practicing gratitude is not the same as, you know, just other forms of spiritual therapy. Practicing gratitude actually raises your vibration. There's a lot of research on that. So if you are struggling, one of the easiest ways to raise your vibration and sort of start your journey is by practicing gratitude, especially in your power state. So power state is the moment just before you're falling asleep and just as you're waking up. This is a time where your subconscious mind is most susceptible to positive suggestion. So those are the times where you should say, like, I'm grateful for my body. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for the roof over my head. I'm grateful that I don't need to potentially choose to heat my house or put food on the table. And again, this is the world that we are living in. This is the country that we are living in, that a lot of people will choose heat or eat. It's just disgraceful.
I mean, yeah, in a third world country, not that it's acceptable, but you know, there are people who struggle in that way, and it's like, you know, that's the reason why it's a third world country.
I believe it's a developing nation, actually.
As in what it should be called?
Yeah, I do believe they changed the terminology, yeah. But then I meet some people and they're like, no, it's still a third world country.
I mean, so. Yeah. Listen, I put my foot in my mouth with a lot of things all the time. I'm old school. Yeah, I'm old school.
So do I. And when I put my foot in my mouth, I am very open for people to, you know, correct me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, same here. Yeah. But yeah, you know, you definitely, it shouldn't be happening anywhere, but definitely not, you know, in a developed country. Yeah. Were you a feminist whilst you were married?
No, I was not. I didn't understand feminism. I kind of thought that it was sort of what those bra-burning lesbians. All the power to them. It's that if anything is sort of anti-man, I think. But I recently went to a party with some of my friends, one of whom is my badass feminist friend, and someone asked her and her partner, oh, what's it like living in a household with two feminists? And he said that as an insult to the guy, right? He was sort of saying, well, you're a feminist. And he looked at him and he went, it's pretty fantastic. And he said to the guy who was sort of being a bit derogatory, he said, so tell me, what is feminism? And my feminist friend said, it's actually about equality. And it is. It's about equality. We should all acknowledge that we all have masculine and feminine energy. A lot of people I meet and a lot of my clients, they're unbalanced because they're either too much in their masculine body or they're too much in their feminine body. We are all one. We all have masculine and feminine powers and spirituality, and we are looking for equality.
In the dating market, I know you're not in it, would you say that people out of these two, polygamy, monogamy, what should people be doing?
They're much more than monogamy and polygamy, firstly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to say that. You absolutely need to create a life that works for you. Okay. And maybe monogamy, first of all, can I say monogamy is one life. So nowadays, I think people have a misunderstanding of it anyway. People think that exclusivity is monogamy. The chances are in the Western world, you're not monogamous because you had a relationship, and yes, you might have been faithful for 3 years, but then you moved on to someone else for 5 years, and then you moved on to someone else. And you might be faithful in all of your relationships, but that's not monogamy. Okay. Monogamy, unless you're coming from quite a strict religious background and you only have slept with one person for your whole life, that is monogamy. Otherwise, it's just being faithful.
Got you.
Monogamy might work for you for 10 years in a beautiful marriage, and then you get bored of each other, and then you might want to try something else. Like polyamory, for example. Polyamory is when you have one main partner and you could be married to them, but then you potentially also have sexual relationships or emotional relationships outside of the two of you. But it's all based on trust, and it should all be openly discussed, so everyone feels safe.
Yeah.
Again, it's when you start lying, then people get hurt.
Okay. Do you think that? Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is find the one that works for you.
And for the time being, if it doesn't work forever, then that's okay. I also think people need to move away from the idea that having a long relationship means a good relationship. Because you could be in a relationship for 10 years and you could have cried every day, and you could have been beaten, and you could have been cheated on, and you could have been, all these horrible things that can go wrong in a relationship. Does it mean anything that you were with them for 10 years? If anything, you wasted 10 years of your life. However, you could have one really good year in a relationship and then the person moves away and you decide, you know what? I'm not into a long distance relationship. Let's call it quits now and we'll be friends. And there's a mutual understanding and a mutual respect as you walk away. So just because you have a long relationship doesn't mean that it's a good relationship. And just because you have a fling for 3 months doesn't mean that it was bad and it had to end because of something horrible.
Just coming to the end of our chat, how is your mental health, and what do you have to say in general about mental health for people?
I would say my mental headspace is a pretty good one right now. I tell people, don't try to always have a positive mindset, because there are going to be dips. You cannot constantly have a positive mindset. It's just not going to work. At the beginning of the year, I was a very, very different person. I was very, very broken. And I can safely say January, February, March were probably the lowest that I've ever been. But the glow up has been real. I lost 10 kilos. I worked out consistently. I focused on my children. I focused my attention in the areas of my life that brought me joy. And that's what you have to do. If you look around and you realize that nothing around you brings you joy, you need to change things. And it's not easy to make change, but it's worth it.
I say take pills if you're, subscribe to medication. What do you say? I'm joking, obviously, but I'm just trying to piss you off so you can.
I think we live in a society, well, the UK has maybe 40 million population around there. Maybe it's a little bit lower, a little bit less. And I believe the last time I checked in 2019 or 2020, we were prescribing over 70 million prescriptions. And some of those are repeat prescriptions. I would love it if society and just the mental health area in general would prescribe medication not as a first resort, but as a last resort. Talking therapies like clinical hypnotherapy, NLP, life coaching, which is all about goal setting. These methods work. There's a lot of research that shows that it works. Medication is great and it works for some people. And I'm not against medication. I'm just against it being the first resort. I think it's very sad that in this country, the mental health budget is just constantly being cut. And people cannot access healthcare. I have a very good friend who is in a really horrible abusive relationship, and the guy is actually in jail now, but she was offered 10 sessions of therapy for free for herself, and I think her children, who witnessed some of it, got 5 sessions with a family therapist. Now she's on a waiting list that's going to be between 6 to 12 months. she's lucky that she has supportive friends to help her on the down days, but there are many people who don't, and those stories end very tragically. We shouldn't be popping pills. We should be helping people get through their trauma. And I mean, I think just the whole system needs to be rejuggled.
Finally, Shorty, talk to us a little bit about your actual brand as a life coach and a bit more about what your message is.
So my message is quantum physics meets Mother Nature. It's all connected, and you need to find your form of self-development and your form of therapy. And there are so many ways to help yourself. I often say to people, that come to me and they say, oh, well, I went to counseling and it didn't work. And, I had a phobia and I did something and it didn't work. Therapy is like a good pair of jeans, okay? So you need to try 20 on sometimes to find the perfect fit. And after a few years, your body shape might change and you need a new pair of jeans. Self-development and therapy is an ongoing process, and so is healing and so is trauma. What I would love people to understand is don't give up, and just because one thing didn't work doesn't mean that another thing won't work for you. So I help people in many different ways. Life coaching, like I said, is all about setting goals and working towards them, and I help my clients stay accountable. Clinical hypnotherapy is great for fears and phobias. I had 2 clients come to me recently with really severe phobias that one had had his phobia for 15 years and one of them had had them for 30 years. I had one client for 2 sessions and another one for 3 sessions, and their phobias are completely gone. I'm really passionate about rapid transformational therapy. I don't believe that you should go to therapy for 10 years talking about why your trauma defines you. If anything, you need to work through your trauma so you can look back and say, well, I got over it. You might dip again, but you can live a fulfilling life knowing that you did the right things and took the right steps to heal yourself. And neurolinguistic programming is all about, the language that you use, what you're saying to yourself that has an effect on your life. I love helping people. I particularly love working with women and moms and maybe parents as well. Like, I would love parents to understand that it's not hard and it's not difficult. Yes, it is sometimes, but don't say it as a generalized term, like motherhood is so hard, because it's not all the time. It should be really, really fun. It should be really rewarding. So I suppose my message to people is allow yourself to heal, allow yourself to feel, and move forward. And you deserve to live your best life. You are worthy of living a happy life.
Thank you.
Thank you.